Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Simonson. I am head of public outreach at the Leo Beck Institute, and I'm also head of the reference division here at the Leo Beck Institute. I wanted to welcome everyone today to our talk, and our talk is today is Deported from Belgium, Research, Education, and Commemoration at Kazerne Dossin in Mechelen. So this was a transit camp for the Jews of Belgium in the Nazi period. And from the Kazerne Dossin, people were deported largely to the Auschwitz death camp, to other places as well. Among them, of course, were Germans and Austrians who had fled to Belgium seeking safety throughout the 1930s. Before we begin, I wanted to first thank a few people. I wanted to thank, first of all, the Kazerne Dossin for speaking with us today about their organization. I wanted to thank our speaker, Veerle Vanden Daelen, and I will be giving a fuller introduction of her later in this program. And I also wanted to thank Susan Delal, who helped to curate this program for us today. I wanted to begin by talking a little bit very briefly about the Kazerne Dossin. And I'm just taking this from the website that we created for registration, just to refresh our minds. During the Second World War, 25,843 Jews, Sinti and Roma, were deported from the Dossin barracks in Mechelen, Belgium, mostly to Auschwitz-Birkenau. Only about 5% survived the camps. The site is now home to the Kazerne Dossin Memorial, Museum and Research Center on Holocaust and Human Rights. And Dr. Veerle Vanden Daelen, again I'll introduce later, is the Curator and Director of Collections and Research. The former assembly camp in Belgium is now a main site of remembrance, education, and research on the Holocaust for Belgium and indeed for Europe. We're going to begin by first watching a short video that Susan Delal made for us at my request. Her own family was involved in the history of the Kazerne Dossin. When she grew up, her family never talked about what had happened in the war. She had never heard of a place called Kazerne Dossin. And in this video, which runs a few minutes, she is going to talk about discovering it, what it is, and now her own relationship with it.
Hello, my name is Susie Ermin Dalal. I'm a fervent follower of the Leo Beck Institute, particularly the Leo Beck Institute book club and lectures. I'm very pleased that I am able to introduce the talk today about the Kazerne Dossin. My grandfather fought for the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, moving to Belgium after World War I. He was drafted from a village in Galicia. He fought for this empire. My whole family immigrated to Belgium at the turn of the last century. I grew up in Antwerp, Belgium. I've been a New Yorker for many decades. I first found out about the existence of the Kazerne Dossin when it was created by my father's very good friend, Nathan Ramet. He was my father's schoolmate. He was deported from Kazerne Dossin and was fortunate enough to come back. He was the first president of the Kazerne Dossin. I was working on a project, writing a book, and I reread my father's memoirs, which had collected dust for many decades, in fact, 30 years. I stumbled on the fact that my Belgian relatives that had been deported from Kazerne Dossin. For my research, I contacted the Kazerne Dossin and decided to go visit it and meet the archivist in order to get all the information and details of this tragic and dark times in Belgium history. The archivists were phenomenal in digging up proven precise and detailed information that included both pictures and paperwork. They were so very helpful in my research, and anybody who wants to delve into their family history and past should contact and come visit the Kazerne Dossin. It's so worthwhile. The most important building at the site, as of now, is a five-story building with impressive architectural design, with a lot of open space. One wall of the interior of the building goes the length of all five floors, and it covers wall to wall, and it's covered wall to wall with 25,843 mostly black and white photographs of each deportee who was sent out from Kazerne Dossin to Auschwitz. Very few of them have a yellow tinge to them. Upon visiting, I was totally overwhelmed. The ones with a yellow tinge are the very lucky ones who came back and returned. I looked up my family, and they were all on the wall. I could locate them through a touch use database available to visitors on the site, on each floor, very modern and sophisticated. I realized that my aunt's photo had an empty silhouette next to hers. I inquired and realized that children under the age of 12 or 11 had their pictures missing because they were registered on the ID card of one of their parents. This year, upon the passing of my mother, I found the picture in her apartment of a little girl who's my little cousin of 12 years old, named Lily in the family, who was deported with her mom. In my father's memoirs, he mentions that he was walking in the summer before the invasion of Belgium with his 10-year-old cousin Lily, who said to him in French, Jacques, je ne veux pas mourir, which in English is Jack, I don't want to die. He said he was so moved and he'll never forget it. She's the one that we're talking about. There's a portrait commemoration this year in the fall on this Thanksgiving Day, and I will be there to put her face to her name on the wall, a most moving and emotional event for me. It is especially for my father that I'm doing this. I would highly encourage you to go and visit the Kazerne Dossin. You can look at their website. For your information, there were people from many different countries and origins, including Germans and Austrians, who took refuge in Belgium before the war and during the war and were deported from Kazerne Dossin. I would suggest for you to come and visit and pay homage and pay respect to your relatives, your family members deported from Kazerne Dossin, and also for those relatives who were fortunate enough to return in memory of this tragic and traumatic episode of history. Thank you.
So I thank you, Susan, for that introduction. And I'm going to turn it over now to Veerle, and I'm going to first provide a proper introduction. Veerle Vanden Daelen is curator and director of collections and research at Kazerne Dossin, the Memorial Museum and Research Center on the Holocaust and Human Rights. She holds a PhD in history from the University of Antwerp. Her dissertation examined the return and reconstruction of Jewish life in Antwerp after the Second World War. She's held fellowships at the Frankel Institute for Advanced Judaic Studies at the University of Michigan and the Herbert D. Katz Center for Advanced Judaic Studies at University of Pennsylvania. She's also authored two books, which we wrote the names on our website, but I am not going to try and read Belgian to you all here and now. But both the books have to do with Jewish history in Belgium and the war. Veerle is actively involved in the European Holocaust Research Infrastructure, EHRI. Some of us may know of that who do research, and is a member of the Belgian delegation to the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. She's also affiliated to the University of Antwerp, where she's taught courses on migration, history, Jewish history, and other topics, and where together with Karen Hofmeister, she organizes the annual Contact Day Jewish Studies on the Low Countries at the Institute of Jewish Studies. So, Veerle, thank you for being with us today, and you can begin your presentation, and we can all learn a little more about this place.
Great. Well, thank you so much, first and foremost, for this invitation. I hope you can all see the PowerPoint now and that you can hear me well. It's a real honor to be able to talk with you today and to present the place that I'm working at and its history. So I'm going to take you through the history of the place during the Second World War and then explain what we are doing at Kazerne Dossin today. It was already mentioned that many German Austrian Jews tried to flee via Belgium to safer havens to get away from the Nazi regime. And the painting that you see on the opening slide is by one of these refugees, by Irene Spieker, who was a German Jewish refugee who ended up being assigned to the Jewish staff of the Kazerne Dossin in the assembly camp as a painter. And I will show you through the presentation what she mostly had to paint. But this particular painting, she evoked the fear for the deportation trains. People in the camp did not know the destination. They knew they didn't hear much about those who had left the place, or that they heard nothing about it, and that they did not really have exact information. So this painting, entitled The Death Train, which is kept in Israel at the moment, just evokes the feeling, the fear that people had when trains left the barracks in Mechelen. Today at Kazerne Dossin, the historical barracks, which you see below on the slide, house the memorial and the research center with the archives and the library. And across the historical building, there is a new building which houses the museum, where we have the permanent and temporary exhibitions and our educational facilities. For your information, right next to the barracks used to be railroad tracks. So it was a secluded barracks with railroad tracks right next to it. And moreover, the place is situated, Mechelen, right between Antwerp and Brussels, which is why the Nazis chose this place for the assembly camp for Jews in Belgium, because the majority of Belgium's Jewish inhabitants lived 90% in Brussels and Antwerp together. So to just give you an idea of the Jewish population in Belgium at the eve of the Second World War until today, even though some people say that the estimates for today should be lower, it is a fairly young community at the outbreak of the Second World War. So mid-19th century, it is not a very large community. It only starts to grow very much at the last quarter of the 19th century. But once it starts growing quite fast and quite large in a short time. So we see from 5,000 last quarter of the 19th century till a much, much higher number at the outbreak of the First World War. During the First World War, many of the Jewish inhabitants of Belgium flee abroad because many of them have enemy nationality, and many of them have fled Eastern Europe because of wars, because of discrimination, because of persecution. So they went away. After the war, many of them returned. They were joined by further newcomers from Eastern Europe, Central Europe, Southern Europe to a lesser extent. And they were joined as of 1933 by people who wanted to flee the Nazi regime. So German Jews, and as of 1938, Austrian Jews and other Jews gradually falling under the Nazi regime. So they all would become victim of the persecution of Jews in Belgium during the Second World War. When the Nazis invaded Belgium on the 10th of May 1940, those who had tried to flee the Nazi regime were the first to be victim again. They had fled their home country because of their Jewish identity. And now, with the invasion of the Nazis, they were labeled enemy nationals by the Belgian government, and they were deported together with Nazi sympathizers to France. So one cannot imagine what that must have been like for people who were in that situation. Many people, Jews and non-Jews alike, fled the country at the outbreak of the war. But also quite a few, the majority, were forced to return back home because they didn't make it on the ship that they hoped to take towards England, or they didn't make it to unoccupied France. So many people returned home and were then going to be confronted with the anti-Jewish decrees and the persecution of Jews in Belgium. The first decree, which was proclaimed in the end of 1940, was to register, the obligation to go to your city service to register in a register for Jews. This so maybe most innocent type of decree was actually the most dangerous of them all, because now the occupier had an overview of the Jewish population in Belgium, which it otherwise would not have had, because this was not registered by the Belgian state prior to the Second World War. 17 anti-Jewish decrees would follow in total, and those would gradually identify, rob, stigmatize, exclude, and remove finally Jewish population from general society. So what you see on the left-hand side is that decree to register in the Jewish register. Then you see also a cafe, a photo of a cafe in Brussels in 1941, indicating it as a Jewish business. And you also see the Jewish badge, the way it was made for Jews in Belgium. They chose J and not the full word, because then it worked in all three languages, Jude, Jood, Juif. This was the decree of 27 May 1942, which made it obligatory for every Jewish inhabitant from 6 years old and older to wear this, so to be clearly stigmatized. The next step was the physical removal, exclusion from society, and the deportation. The camp in Mechelen opened on the 27th of July, 1942. It was named the SS Sammellager in Mechelen, so an SS assembly camp under the command of Commander Schmidt, who you see on the right-hand side. He was also the one who led the concentration camp of Breendonk, which is not far from Mechelen. And so it was a camp under Nazi leadership with Flemish SS as guards, so Belgian collaborators, and Jewish detainees as staff. So the first people that were arrested at the station in Antwerp, for example, were first brought to Breendonk, and then from Breendonk transferred to Mechelen to be the first staff members in the camp. Some of them remained into the camp till the end of the war. What we see here on this picture is one of the rare photographs that we have from the camp during the occupation. You see the inner courtyard, so you see it's a secluded area. You see the trucks that have arrived in the inner courtyard and which have brought to Kazerne Dossin people with their luggage. You see as well that there is a registration ongoing. So you see a little desk. I don't know whether you see the arrow that I'm pointing at, where a woman is registering another woman. You also see walking across the inner courtyard people wearing an armband, indicating that they are part of the staff. People arriving there with their luggage. in the summer of 42, people came to the Dossin barracks with a work order. They received a work order saying that they had to pack and come to the Dossin barracks for obligatory labor. Some people obeyed this order and indeed came into the Dossin barracks following this order. But not all of the Jews in Belgium obeyed this order, and so already on 15 August 1942, the first large roundup took place in Antwerp, and many more followed. And so in the first months of the camp, the people who entered the camp did not stay there for a very long time because with the people who came with the work order and the people who were rounded up in the razzias, the camp quickly had about 1,000 people, which was about the number that the Nazis awaited to organize a deportation train from Dossin, mostly to Auschwitz-Birkenau. So for many people, their stay in the Dossin barracks was a couple of hours, a couple of days, very short time. After the summer and autumn of 42, when Jews went into hiding and when it was individual arrests, people stayed for much longer in the Dossin barracks, for weeks, for months. And as of the autumn of 1943, the Jewish internees were also joined by Sinti and Roma, arrested in Belgium and northern France. I also have to say that also Jews brought to the Dossin barracks were Jews living in Belgium and northern France or arrested in these territories. But what were the living conditions then like in this camp? So first and foremost, one became a number. I showed you the painting, The Death Train by Irene Spiker, but her main task in the camp was to paint the cards that you see on the right-hand side with a Roman number indicating the transport number and an Arabic number indicating the person's individual number on the deportation train. So as soon as people arrived in the camp, they were registered onto a transport list, which you see on the left-hand side, indicating again the number of the transport in Roman numbers, and then each individual deportee, their names are registered, and then they become one number on the transport list. You also see that people have to show their personal belongings, so everything is registered, everything is taken away, basically. This is called the Aufnahme, and so Jewish staff was ordered to register people onto the transport lists. Jewish detainees had to make these cards, which you then see that people had to carry around their necks. And what we also will notice throughout the presentation is that you will see not very many photos, but more drawings made by the people that were interned into the camp. So because there is very few to no photo material, we have mostly drawings and no photos. Here you see the living conditions in the camp. So basically there were very crowded mixed dormitories. There were no real activities. So there was not obligatory labor. There was there was nothing really. It was a waiting room for Auschwitz. There was limited food. Hygiene conditions were not ideal. There was too little infrastructure for the number of prisoners. And then the foot control, which you see on the right-hand side, is one of the things that made a big impression because people were requested to show that they had clean feet, which was one of the, nasty parts of being in the camp. And that was then checked, whereas there was nothing much one could do about it. Again, paintings that we see. What is tricky to really document the history of the Dossin barracks is the fact that Most people who entered the barracks were deported, and the survival rate was only about 5%. So most people perished. And those who had survived and who found the resilience to testify about what happened to them, they will testify mostly about the destination of the deportation trains. They will say what happened in Auschwitz. They will say what happened in the various camps they were taken to. They will say what the death march was like. They will say what repatriation was like, perhaps. But their time in Dossin was very often very short and was, compared to what was to follow, something that was given less attention in their testimonies. So we have these drawings, we have the testimonies of the Jewish staff and of those who did tell us about the camp, but it was not easy. What also happened in the camp was humiliation of Orthodox Jews in this case, where you see, it's again one of the very few photos that we have where you see a row of Orthodox Jews lined up in the inner courtyard. The men have either swastika on their outfit, their beards have been shaven, they wear their talit katan over their suits, and so you clearly see that this is an act of utter humiliation. Yet the prisoners into the camp, the detainees, they gave proof of agency, they gave proof of resilience. For example, Lon Landau, who was a decorator of the Royal Dutch Theatre, the opera in Antwerp, he made puppets of popular heroes like Del Uilenspiegel, Robin Hood, and he would create a puppet theater and organize a puppet theater in the barracks. They organized also various shows to kind of put their minds to something else, to also do something while otherwise no activities were organized. So you also see on the right-hand side some drawings that was the decors that he designed for the Carmen opera. So there was this type of activity in the camp as well. Unfortunately, Lon was deported on the 4th of April, 1944 with the Transport 24, and he died shortly after liberation in Bergen-Belsen of typhus. What was also happening as we are getting to the end of the year is that there was a Chanukia, for example, made by Alexandre Gourari. Alexandre was arrested and locked up in the Dossin barracks on the 28th of September 1943. And as he was still in the Dossin barracks when Hanukkah was approaching, Hanukkah in 43 was from the 21st till the 28th of December, he made a Chanukiah with little pieces of wood so that he and everyone locked up with him could still celebrate this Jewish holiday and bring light in the darkest times. And what you see on the slide as well is on the left-hand side, a handwritten ketubah. It's the ketubah, which dates from the 30th of July, 1943, of Rachel Mandel and Israel Lipschitz, whose drawings you also see in the middle of the slide. Rachel was 19 and Israel was 20. They were brought into the Dossin Kazerne in January 43. And on the 30th of July, on the eve, the day before their deportation, they got married. And so we still have the ketubah and these drawings, but unfortunately, neither of the newlyweds would survive the camps. In total, as already mentioned, there are 25,843 people deported from the Dossin barracks, of which 25,490 Jews and 353 Sinti and Roma. Most of the deportation trains went to Auschwitz-Birkenau. All Sinti and Roma went to Auschwitz-Birkenau, and 218 of the Jewish detainees were deported to other camps, such as Ravensbrück, Buchenwald, Bergen-Belsen, and Vittel. Until the 20th convoy on 19 April 1943, third-class wagons, carriages were used, which you see on the photo. So third-class carriages, which were carriages meant for human transportation. As of the 20th convoy, boxcars were utilized. One could consider the first more civil, yet the tragedy of this is that it further masked the genocidal intent and process. When one is transported in cars meant for goods rather than people, one does not presume any good intentions anymore. The same 20th convoy is also worth mentioning separately because of another important reason. It was the one and only deportation train ever stopped on its route to Auschwitz by the resistance. Indeed, on its trajectory in Belgium, 3 young men managed to stop the train and open up one of the wagons upon which 17 people could escape from the train. But these were not the only ones who escaped. We have found that in total there were 590 escapes from the deportation trains from Dossin, concerning 572 people. So indeed, there were those who escaped twice, even more times. For 326 of them, their escape was successful. Others were arrested again or died during the escape attempts. As far as we know, there were 1,410 camp survivors, plus then the 326 who escaped successfully from the deportation train. And on top of that, we know of at least 5,970 Jews who lived in Belgium who were deported via Drancy in France, out of which 297 survived the camps. And then came the liberation. The liberation of the Dossin barracks was on the 4th of September 1944. Most of Belgium would be liberated on this 3rd and 4th of September 1944 in the autumn of 44. However, it was basically a non-event, the liberation of Dossin. The guards left the barracks overnight from the 3rd to the 4th and left the detainees in the camp. So there's no glorious entrance of tanks or Allied soldiers. The detainees were just left alone. And so them, together with those who had survived in hiding in Belgium, then were confronted with the long wait. Because as we know, Auschwitz would only be liberated on the 27th of January 1945, months later, and certain other camps would only be liberated as of May 45. And so it would be not weeks, but months of uncertainty, of waiting for news of those who had been taken away, of those who had been deported from these Dossin barracks. And again, German Jews and Jews who had fled the Nazi Reich prior to the invasion of Belgium saw themselves victim of their identity, this time the 4th time. So they had fled because of being Jewish from their home countries. I already told you they were considered enemy nationals at the outbreak of the war. During the war, they were persecuted for being Jewish. They lost their nationality during the war as a result of one of the anti-Jewish decrees. They did receive their nationality back at the liberation and therefore were again labeled enemy nationals after the war, and in the worst case were interned and saw their assets put under sequester. Despite all of the hardships, Jewish life reorganized itself in Belgium quite soon. And so we see that despite, for example, the looting, which you see here on the photo is the interior of the Synagogue of Portuguese Rite in Antwerp, which is clearly looted, we see that religious, social, economical, educational Jewish life restarts. But what about the Dossin barracks? what happened there. The Dossin barracks here on a photo back in time where you still see those railroad tracks next to the barracks, they were used already in September 44 to as a camp again to put presumed collaborators, to intern presumed collaborators. There were also executions across the other side of the building of convicted collaborators. As of 48, the Belgian military, which had used the barracks in the interwar period already, came back into the barracks and used it again. So there was the Belgian Military School for Administration and Finances from 48 till 75. This means that some Jews in Belgium who did their military service in the Dossin barracks. When the Belgian army left the barracks became property of the city of Mechelen, who at first did not quite know what to do with it, whether to tear it down, whether to do something with it. At the end of the day, it was decided to privatize it and to make it into living facilities, into apartments, sold as apartments in the court of Habsburg, referring to the time when this building was constructed. And so it was privatized and people came to live into the barracks. And this is also the moment where Jewish representatives went to talk to the government to see whether the history of this place should not be receiving a space there at in the barracks as well. So if we look at how memorialization and museum information was at the barracks, we see that after the liberation, a first commemorative plaquette was put into the wall of the building in 1948 to commemorate Jewish victims deported from there. From 57 onwards, an annual commemoration ceremony by Jewish organizations was held at the barracks, which you can see here an old photo of. Then in 1986, a new monument with 6 pieces of railroad tracks, which you can see here, was put in front of that plaquette. Only in 95, a little bit to the right of this plaquette, came also a plaquette to commemorate the Sinti and Roma victims. When the privatization took place, the front wing of the building was then became available for what one thought would be a memorial. It became a museum, a small museum, which was prepared and opened in the 1990s. So as of 1996, there was a small museum in the historical building, but lucky enough, there were very, very many school groups coming and visiting, and so we reached max capacity. We needed more space because there was so much interest from schools to come and learn about what happened there, to learn about the Holocaust. And so the Flemish government decided to invest into building a much larger museum across the building. And the initial museum became a memorial, which we have fully renewed and reopened just before pandemic hit. And maybe also partially because of that, there is also a way that you can visit the memorial online. I can share that link later during the presentation. So the historical building now houses the memorial, and that is one of our key functions at Kazerne Dossin. So on the one hand, you have the historical building and with the memorial and also the archive and the library, and then the big building where we have the permanent exhibition on 3 floors and temporary exhibitions and educational rooms and so on and so forth. The foundation for our work is the archive and the library. We host over 2 million digitized documents concerning the Belgian case of the Holocaust. over 160 linear meters of archives, and we're still collecting. So everybody who has any type of information of family connected with Belgium, connected with the Dossin barracks, is very, very welcome to contact us so that we can have this information as well for our work. We have objects, artworks, and a large library. And that is the foundation for the educational and commemorative and research work that we do at the museum. The portrait wall, which Susie already alluded to, here you see it. It goes from the 3rd floor, or American 4th floor of the museum, till -1. And as Susie already described, you see on the one hand photos and you see silhouettes indicating whether it's a man, a woman, and some indication of the age. And you see the sepia pictures of those who survived. So we go chronologically from this 3rd or 4th floor all the way till -1, from the first deportation train to the last deportation train. And so the day after tomorrow, on Thanksgiving Day, we will be inaugurating 136 new portraits onto this museum wall, and 67 photos will be added to the digital memorial for Jews deported from Drancy who lived in Belgium prior to the war. And this is truly a living monument. So you can already touch the wall and see which photos have been added, but you can also take part in our portrait ceremony, so the one that takes place the day after tomorrow. We also record it, so everybody can watch former ceremonies or watch the one from this year in a couple weeks' time. It's a serene ceremony where we add those photos that we found the last year. But we also have a digital commemorative wall, where an online memorial where you can digitally light a candle, a kind of yahrzeit candle, where you can leave your name, where you can leave a message. And at this moment, we have a large project called Every Name Matters, or the way you see it in Dutch here, Elke Naam Telt, where we have opened recording studios via which people come and record the name of people deported from the Dossin barracks. And so our idea is that we will have every person who comes to the recording studios records one name of one person deported. So we will have 25,843 different voices commemorating all the people deported from this place. And this audio will be put into the Zachor room, into the memorial, and can also be used at other places. And so it's really a community project that has had a large impact for all of those who have participated, and we're hoping to finalize that in the course of next year. But you can definitely be in touch should you want to know more about this program. In the museum, we have educational offers for schools from the last 2 years of primary school all the way through high school and university. We do a lot of place-based learning, and we work with the archival materials from our archive. We connect past, present, and future, and age appropriate, we go through the mechanisms that can lead to genocide, and we develop the Belgian case of the Holocaust for various learning groups. So not only educational programs for children and schools or high schools, but also for adult learners and for a broad audience, also people who come during their free time. But our adult learners is also a growing number of projects that we host. So we have a project called Holocaust, Police and Human Rights, of which you see a photo here, which is a program where police officers come to the museum to learn about the 10 stages of genocide, the spiral of hate, to learn the historical case of the Holocaust, the Belgian case of the Holocaust. So they go through the whole permanent exhibition during the morning. And in the afternoon, they will use the knowledge that they have picked up in the morning to do dilemma training with real life based cases that they are confronted with in their personal professional activity. These courses are not taught by historians like me, but by policemen. So we work together with police officers. There's 2 people from the police permanently at our museum who help train their colleagues, their fellow policemen, to do these offers, which makes it peer-to-peer learning and a safer environment as well for people to learn. So we have now had this project for many years, and we still see that there's a huge impact, and that this way of working really bears fruit. We also have learning pathways or individual trajectories, learning programs with justice and with the soccer world. So people who have committed hate crimes, people who made racist statements, for example, in a football stadium, discriminated against others or engaged in negationism, they can also have a tailor-made project at our museum. When there is sufficient, interest and commitment of the person who has committed those hate crimes to learn and to be willing to receive this type of input. And that's a whole trajectory with preparation, the visit, and the whole after trajectory and path as well. We also work with the penitentiary system, so with people who work in prisons. And we try to share our knowledge and what we are doing as much as we can internationally to also learn from others. So when we did Connecting Law and Memory, we shared and learned good practice of similar institutions worldwide. So, for example, the programs from USHMM, of other police services in the world. And so in that way, we want to continue learning, and we hope to be a place where dialogue is possible and where dilemma training can be put forward, and to make an impact, and to in that way bridge also from Holocaust to human rights. That I think is in a nutshell the history of the place that I am working. Michael, I assume to questions.
Thank you, Veerle. That was a very nice presentation, and I think you gave us a lot of information. I was going to start with the questions a little bit. I have a few I could ask too. I was just wondering, do you have a lot of documentation, or let's call them files, of the people who were deported as well, or are those kept on site at the Kazerne Dossin if they exist?
So one of the impressive collections that we have on site is what we call the relics, which is what people had on them when they arrived in the barracks. So their identity card, the letters that they carried in, and basically, if you would just arrest somebody in the street, what they have in their purse, what they have in their pockets. We don't have those for everyone, only for the lost deportation trains, but those are very moving documents, and for very many, the lost traces. What we also have is some notes that were thrown out of the train, for example, given either by the families that received those notes, and very often that was the last sign of life for somebody. Then there are obviously the transport lists, which is unusual that we have all that information, that we have all those names. And then given the fact that Belgium was so late to really make a museum at the place, it means that many of the archives were already in other places by the time that there was a museum in Mechelen. And so what we did as well is we have a lot of copy archives from other institutions so that we, at least at the site itself, can document as much as possible and provide as much information as possible. So, for example, people who fled Germany in the 1930s from Austria, from Germany, they typically had to register like any other immigrant with the aliens police, and they have a file there with information about where they came from, where they lived, and so on and so forth. So this type of information there is as well. We have those personal documents sometimes. So it's a lot of information from various sources that and that's how we try to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. I'm sorry, I cannot hear. I have no sound. I don't know what's happening, but I have no sound. So sorry, but now I wish I could lip read, but okay. I can go through some of the questions already. So I see that there's a question: have any survivors who went through the Dossin internment camp moved into the apartments, and are there Jews living in these apartments today? So not that I am aware of, but that doesn't mean anything. So I'm not aware of Jewish inhabitants of the Dossin barracks. But it is still, I mean, in Drancy in France, you have the same, where the internment camp is now also living facilities. It's still, yeah, it is a strange feeling that there's people living in what used to be an assembly camp. Then there is also a question whether there's a possibility of obtaining the 4-volume set Mechelen Auschwitz 1942-1944. So for those of you who don't know what this refers to, so there was a 4-volume publication with the portraits that were found and information about each of the transports and the history of the Dossin barracks published. And as far as I know, those are sold out. But we do get that request very often. So we could look into, sometimes people bring in used copies, and then we always accept them because we know that very many people want to have those books. And another possibility would be to publish them online again, for example. We could look into that. Many of the texts from the books have been published onto our memorial website, and the photos are all onto the memorial website. I did not show that yet, but I can share this for a second still. Wait, yeah, this way. There is an in memoriam site, the digital wall of deportees from the Dossin barracks, where you can find all the photos of deportees from Mechelen. that we have found, but you can also see if we don't have a photo yet. So then you would see the silhouette. And if you would have a photo of this person, then please do contact us, because then we would be very interested to receiving the photo. There's also information about the deportation train, so each transport online, so that can make up for not having the books at this very moment. The link that I put up there as well is how to visit the memorial online. So those are things that I thought I would share as well. But let's get back to the questions.
Also, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Okay, thank goodness. So
cool.
I can go on with the questions. I
That
didn't
would be great.
need for you to have to do all that. So the next question, what exactly is in that large memorial, the historical building? So I think what you mean, Mitchell, is that there's two buildings as you saw, and there's
Mhm,
the original barracks, and then what looks like the large memorial, which it is a memorial,
mhm,
is the actual museum and the wall of remembrance with all the photographs, I assume,
mhm.
and the research areas, the archives, and so on, right? Or so it's more like it's a museum, it's a memorial as a museum,
Mhm.
right? Was that what you would say, Veerle? Or hopefully I'm understanding your question right, Mitchell.
I can just take you through it for just a little bit if it works.
Sure.
So let's see. So here you have the memorial. So this is entering the historical buildings, but please know that apart from the walls, there's nothing that is authentic. So when you enter
Hmm.
the memorial, you see eyes that welcome you. These are from photos of people deported from there. Why the eyes? Because it's something human. We make contact with our eyes. We can convey feelings with our eyes. We speak to each other also with our eyes. And we're not looking at outdated hairdo or clothing. Nothing takes our attention away, only the human contact and the fact of them asking us not to forget them. Then what we have in the memorial as a first room is a room that gives the info that evokes the diversity of Jewish life and the normality of a life, with holiday pictures, with teddy bears, with group outings, with wedding photos, with family photos, just to give an idea of the people who came into this barracks were humans. They were not born victims. So we wanted to highlight that as well. And then we symbolically re-enter the barracks via this gate here. And come into the Aufnahme. And into the Aufnahme, there's an installation with a typewriter where you hear and see names being typed onto the transport list. And what you see in the showcases are what I mentioned as the relics. And there you see this diversity, this multitude of languages, this multitude of photos, of documents in all of these showcases. Sorry, there we went a bit. And then we go here, which is a little hallway where you are, in the window. So you see here the inner courtyard now is the garden of the people who live there. And here is a view from the Dossin barracks painted by Irene Spiker from the Malerstube. We see here as well all artwork on the Dossin barracks by people detained in there. And then we move into a room
Mm.
that evokes the life into the barracks. And here you see this Chanukiah that I spoke to you about. You see the letters, you see the needlework, which documented the life, you see the paintings. There is the clock that hang in the inner courtyard. And then the trains leave and people throw notes out of the train. And you have the possibility to see these notes, to see these last words of where people thought they were taken to, but mostly words of love and words of courage for their loved ones. And then one goes down. So you see here the train again, the train of death, the fear of deportation. And then I think I go like so up. We go one floor down. We go into the Zachor room. We go the Zachor room because we are very, very aware of the fact that there's no place where people can go and mourn their loved ones. There's no cemetery. So we have the little white stones and the word Zachor, and this is where the audio will come of the Every Name Matters project to commemorate. And then we continue. So here with I'll make this quick so that I don't take all the time for the questions. Here we have the room of the children. This is all photographs of children deported from here, and an eternal light to shine, and a painting again by Irene Speaker. It's a bit like Schindler's List, but this is a girl with red hair and a green coat. We don't know who she is. We don't know whether she's on the wall with a photo or not, but she was painted because she caught the attention of Irene in the camp. And so she symbolizes all those many people that we don't have a photo for. And then the last room is called Survival. And so this is really what one can visit into the memorial. So I'll stop sharing there. There's that gives a bit of an impression of what one can visit. One can also have an appointment in our reading room and consult the historical documents into the historical building. And one can work and consult and read the books from the library and work in the archives. But that is, we only have the front wing of the building. So the rest of the building is, there's also the city archives of Mechelen in the back of the building, and the rest is private apartments.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to answer the next few questions quickly because it's about getting a recording. We will have this as a recording. It will be on our social media. If you want us to send you a link directly, we can probably do that because we have the list of people who registered for this event. And so I can make sure that a link is sent out to everyone on who is part of this program. If you don't get the link for whatever reason, you can just, or you can't find it on our social media, you can just write me at the Leo Baeck Institute, Michael Simonson. If you go to our website and you send us an email, I will get it. I'm the person, in a sense, who gets all the emails because I do the reference. So I can then send it to you very directly that way. I'm going to continue on here. Thank you for your truly excellent presentation. You mentioned working with others in countries outside of Belgium in your training and information sharing. What are some of those institutions and countries? I know you mentioned America with the USHMM.
For the educational projects or for, all the cooperation?
I think I'd focus on the corporation in this case.
The education?
The cooperation.
Oh, the cooperation. So we really try to have our eyes and ears open to the world as much as possible because we have to. There's no way you can write and work about the history of the Belgian case of the Holocaust in Belgium only. 90% of people deported from Belgium did not have Belgian nationality. So we need to work together. For example, in the European Holocaust Research Infrastructure, we work together on a pan-European scale to connect our archives to other holdings. We also have annual exchanges with, for example, Westerbork and with Memorial de Shoah. We have those cooperations with the National Archives in Belgium, with USHMM, with Westerbork and Memorial de Shoah, so that they can give access to our holdings in their reading rooms. So should you wish to consult our archives, but you're not able to come to Mechelen know that in Washington, D.C., you can make an appointment, providing that you first fill out a research declaration with us, because we want to be as open as possible and only as closed as necessary. So when it's about privacy things. So that's with the archive. So we cooperate as much as possible, because the history of most families are stored in various archives across the world. And then for the educational programs, it just is so interesting and rewarding to have these communities of exchange, to learn from each other, to see what good practice is, how we can inspire each other, how we can provide support and inspiration for each other as educators. And so I think it's just of key importance that we do all these cooperations. It does mean that sometimes we get a bit lost in translation, but Belgium is a little complicated country language-wise, so it is not always easy, but I really strongly believe in this. And I've also been an expert to the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance for many years. And also there, having the contacts with the colleagues, the experts worldwide is just truly rewarding. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, an interesting thing is the original director of the Kazerne Dossin lived in the apartment building. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, he passed
Um,
away recently. Yeah.
yeah. Leslie Floyd says, I contacted your archivist during the pandemic to research family members deported from your facility. The material I received and the guidance to advance my research was amazing. I plan to visit in spring 2026. Thank you.
Oh, well, do keep us posted, because it's always very rewarding for our team, my team collections and research, when people who have received information come and visit. So please let us know when you come.
And David Jacobson says, please contact me if the 4-volume set could be digitized. I would be interested in contributing to the cost of that process. That's very kind, David.
That's very nice.
And Leslie Floyd, who had the thank you note, she also has another thing to ask, to say. I had two first cousins who survived as children in Jewish orphanages in the Antwerp area. Do you have any idea why some children were deported and others survived?
Right. So yes, with the orphanages, it has been pretty tragic, in the sense that, for example, the Jewish orphanage in Antwerp, when people were arrested, um, the adults were typically brought to the prison in Antwerp prior to being brought to Dossin, and the children to the orphanage. And so the orphanage then would have, at the moment that the adults would be picked up at the prison, the van would also stop at the orphanage to pick up the children there whose parents were in the van. So in that sense, that is the story for some of the orphanages, or children in the orphanages that were not orphans at that moment. There is also the fact that the Association of Jews in Belgium also directed orphanages, and that the children in these orphanages were known to the occupier to be in the orphanages, and that they nevertheless were able to stay in those orphanages until liberation. It is the case that the orphanage in Antwerp did evacuate from Antwerp after the large roundups of Jews of Belgian nationality in September 43. So then the kids were evacuated from that orphanage to other, what we call AGB orphanages, elsewhere in the country. So Belgium, on the one hand, has children a high number of children that were deported, and at the same time, those children who survived in the orphanages, and then also a high number of children that survived thanks to the resistance network and were placed with non-Jewish institutions and families. So it's a very mixed story, but if you would like to know more about the orphanages, then you can definitely drop me a line and I can put you in touch with our colleague archivist who specialized on the orphans and what happened to them.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, I think that is the questions that we have. Very interesting to be able to access your archives from USHMM, I'm reading. Can you share the link to explore your archival holdings?
Oh yeah. One sec. So have to see whether I can.
While you're doing that, we can talk too. I mean,
Yeah.
as long as it doesn't bother you. But is it pretty accessible, like just through your main website, or do you have to kind of
Um,
find it?
it, now I'm not too sure where to put it in the chat.
Uh-huh.
How do I do that? Because it's like the Q&A thingy.
I think you could actually, oh, yes, to put it in the chat. I mean, I don't know. I hit chat and yeah, I see what you mean though. Not really able to
I
do it
can
either.
paste it here and then I can put it here. So
Oh,
basically,
there you go.
if you type in Kazerne Dossin and Research Center, you can find information. But please note that our image bank, from a distance, you can only read the collection descriptions. The only collections that are fully available online without being in either our reading room or in the partner reading rooms are the transport lists and the photos of people deported from Dossin and from Drancy. So those are visible to anybody who's looking online from home. And then the collection descriptions are on there, but also please note that we are still working on a backlog. So there is more in our archive than what is out there. So if you have a question, it's always good to be in touch with us. I don't know whether this goes to everybody, but there is a email address to immediately reach me and my colleagues at the archives, which is archives@kazernedossin.eu. And so once you enter your question there, you first get an immediate response that we got your request and that we will answer within, I don't know, 2 weeks or so. Very often you get your answer much quicker than that. So we try to provide as much information as possible, especially when it concerns family members, descendants of people who have a connection with the Dossin barracks or with Belgium and the persecution.
Hmm. One person writes, approximately how far from Brussels and Antwerp is the memorial and museum? And what is the best way to get there from those two cities?
Huh. So I can tell you it's 24 kilometers from Antwerp. Now I'm not too sure what that transfers to in miles. And it's 32 kilometers from Brussels. So basically, it's really in between those two cities. The easiest way when there's no strikes would be to come by train. And otherwise by car, but there's often traffic jams around both Brussels and Antwerp, so that's not super easy, but it's doable, and there's parking facilities nearby. So when you, for example, fly into Brussels airport, you could be at our place in, I would say, 3/4 of an hour later. So
Thanks. And someone's interested in contacting you directly because they have documents you might find interesting.
Oh, sure.
How would they do that? What's the best way to contact you? I mean, I know your email.
Yeah, you can share my email. It's also on the website. It's perfectly fine to share the contact information or also the slides at the very the links at the slides at the very end. And I'm not sure whether what I put into the chat reaches everybody in the audience, but feel free to send this to the people who attended this seminar. It would be our
Okay.
pleasure to enlarge our community and answer any possible questions you may have.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. So I know that it isn't reaching everyone. But after this meeting, we can send the emails that you've asked about, and we can send you Veerle's email as well.
Mhm.
So, um, last comment here. Thank you for your help and meaningful opportunity to participate in today's program. You're welcome. Thank you for coming. I think with that, I think that's the questions we've gone through. And so I think we'll end here. Veerle, I wanted to thank you very much for giving us some more knowledge about the Kazerne Dossin, about the Holocaust in Belgium, and also how it's remembered. And yeah, I'm sure you'll hear from some of the people who are with us today in the audience. I hope for a lot of people listening, it's new information about the stories of their families if they had been in Belgium in this time. If you've been looking where to find information and where to commemorate their lives. So thank you and best tomorrow with the ceremony and the new
Yeah,
photographs or in 2 days, the new
yes.
photographs that are going to be installed. Also thanks to Susan Dalal, who I believe is out there in the audience for making that video for us. All right. I thank you very much, Veerle, and I'll let you off so you can go have a nice evening in Belgium.
Yeah, good afternoon in New York and
Of
here.
course.
And thank you again for this wonderful opportunity. I really appreciate it. And so thank you also
And
for all your work.
yes, and thank you for doing this for us. Very valuable. Thank you.
Right.
So,